Okay, that made it worse. That definitely made it worse. So, if you've been watching the news at all in the last few weeks, months, the last 4 years, realistically, you'll have noticed a lot of discussions concerning who's responsible for directing users towards content that is hateful, divisive, incendiary, etc. I'm going to start by talking about this individual, Frances Haugen. In late 2021-ish, Haugen went public with some pretty damning comments about her now former employers at Facebook, now known as Meta. Listen to what she had to say.
One of the consequences of how Facebook is picking out that content today is it is optimizing for content that gets engagement. Facebook has realized that if they change the algorithm to be safer, people will spend less time on the site, they'll click on less ads, they'll make less money.
So, in other words, the algorithms that generate the next up content, so the content to which consumers are directed, that is often the kind of content that deliberately promotes divisiveness or hateful rhetoric or extremism or radicalization, and they're directed towards that content because it generates revenue. What these algorithms do, essentially, is take anybody with a mild leaning, politically left or right, and then it will take them down rabbit holes that embed them further in their beliefs. It will entrench users in a state of mind where they think that they should be angry, disgruntled, and that there are polar opposites, and that the other side, essentially, is worthy of vitriolic hatred.
It's easier to inspire people to anger than it is to other emotions.
Now, since Haugen went public, the story's been covered extensively by this guy, CNN's Brian Stelter. When Stelter covers the issue of how social media companies perpetuate polarizing poppycock, it's good alliteration, he ultimately comes to the conclusion that responsibility is incumbent on the tech giants, as they're so called.
Are you willing to acknowledge that Facebook is contributing to society's woes, polarization, and all the rest? I know you're going to say they're not the primary cause, but are you willing to acknowledge that Facebook is a contributor? It's pouring gasoline on the burning fire in front of us?
So the discussions always come back to the idea of accountability. If so-called tech giants are profiteering, essentially, off of radicalizing users, young users specifically, then who's responsible? If you really make your money by exploiting the people out there who don't know the difference between just random content and actual news, then yeah, you're obviously responsible for changing that. But coming up is what journalists call the turn, or the moment the other shoe drops. So a lot of us probably remember the Super Size Me documentary by Morgan Spurlock. By consuming nothing but McDonald's for 30 days straight, Spurlock demonstrated some of the health risks posed by fast food restaurants to the consuming public. Now, it is quite shocking to see how unhealthy physically and mentally Spurlock got, but I think I may not be alone in that I ask myself quite frequently, is this a surprise? It doesn't take a genius or a documentary or film crew to observe the fact that eating nothing but McD's for 30 straight days will turn you into a fat, depressed tub of human shit. The turn in this particular piece is that responsibility is on the part of the user as well. If I go into McDonald's, I know that if I have this food ad nauseum, I will turn into this. Just the same, if you go on social media and you consume rubbish content that just promotes vile rhetoric, you will turn into this. Look, it's all well and good to say that as users, we're responsible for practice safe clicking or safe scrolling, but I know it's not always so easy. And I know it's not always so easy if you are from the younger generation, let's say Gen Z or the iGen. Now, I'm not that old. When I was a kid, we had internet, and cell phones were around, but the internet was dial-up. The cell phones weren't smartphones. Technology wasn't quite so ubiquitous as it is now. If I went on the computer lab at school, which looked like this, it was for a very specific exercise, like going on all the right types so I could learn keyboarding skills, which I still haven't learned, by the way. If I went on the internet at home, it was to look at an email or go on MSN Messenger, if you remember that. It wasn't just to scroll for something to do. So what that means is that the way I engage with technology is a little bit different than the way you engage with technology if you were born a little bit later. Because the computer and the phone and the internet had a specific purpose for me, i.e. I got on the computer, did what I needed to, and then I got off, the digital world didn't really become something that I engage with just 24/7. It wasn't something to do as a pastime. Flash forward a few years when the next generation is being born, and since the earliest days, they had a screen in front of their face. So when you're bored, you could just scroll through social media, look at your friends' posts, follow the algorithms. And because that was how you primarily accessed information, that was essentially the only way you knew how to access information. It doesn't matter if it's well-sourced information or just some asshole on YouTube talking to a camera, like me, it's all the same source. So how the hell are you supposed to know the difference between a good source and a faulty source? Flash back a few years to when I was growing up, and the main way I got my general news and information was through cable networks. So CBC, CNN, CTV, CP24, all that stuff. So there's a reference point for me. If I see the kind of, just content out there, the vitriolic, spewy nonsense kind, I then have a reference point to compare it to. I can say, well, that doesn't contain journalistic integrity, this is not sourced, this is not a discussion, this isn't news, this is just some douche with an opinion. If you're the kind of person who only went on social media or other such things to engage with the world, then that reference point is gone. So what to do? Well, if you're a Gen Z or iGen, there's a good chance you don't have any cable news in the home because everything is streaming. And I mean, why would you pay for cable when there's such delicious programming on Prime, Netflix, and Disney for such affordable, prices? That's a bit of a conundrum. But even if you get your news through your phone or your tablet, you can still make sure that it's actual news. Reputable outlets like CBC, CNN, CTV, The Times, The Atlantic, these are all online because it's the 21st century. You can access articles and news on the internet by going to outlets that have established themselves as responsible news agencies before the advent of the internet. Parents out there, if you are going to just stick an iPad or a smartphone in front of your infant/toddler and keep it there until they develop, I would encourage a certain critical practice when consuming digital information. If you see your little chidler starting to get a little bit extreme with his or her views, then, figure out what sort of stuff have you been scrolling through lately. Another thing, curriculums, the shit they teach in schools updates to reflect the times. There wasn't exactly a need for a course that taught the finer points of market affiliation when creating a viral TikTok platform, but now you can probably find all sorts of information on that no matter where you look. So why is it so difficult to imagine that kids could be taught digital literacy at an early age? I think it's great that kids can know how to put on a condom and know how to practice safe sex when they start learning health. But what if they've never learned how to put the metaphorical condom on their eyes when they go into the dirty, filthy world of the internet? So I think there could be a school course or something at an early-ish age that would teach kids how to consume online information with criticality and prudence. The social media rabbit holes we consume, much like McDonald's, are full of toxic crap that harms our mental and physical health. Like, if you don't care if you put harmful content inside of you, it's not really my problem. You can do what you want with your body and your mind. But I do think that everybody should be able to at least know the difference between what's harmful and what's not harmful. Think about it. Oh yeah, like and subscribe.